last year I was abroad the entire year to study engineering at Tsinghua because I think there's so much development happening so quickly there that there are a lot of really exciting possibilities.
So I decided to just take a different language. And part of the way through the year, someone came in and gave a presentation about a summer program that was available to high school students. And so when I was 15, I ended up going to China for a month.
So I'm learning Chinese because I think it's a beautiful language, and also there's a lot of history behind all the words that's really interesting to me. And I also went for my own traveling purposes, backpacking, and it's a land of adventure, really.
So I was adopted from China when I was 7 months old. So I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and from a little kid, I've always kind of wanted to learn more about Chinese culture.
Most Americans don't have a lot of educational focus on China, and I thought that it was a pretty key nation in the world.
I've always been interested in Asia because I lived in China when I was really young. My parents were expats in Beijing, and my family lived there for 2.5 years. So I've kind of always had this fascination with my earliest memories, I suppose.
Well, I think that China is an extremely powerful part of our global economy, and I think we all do pay a lot of attention to China here in the United States, but I think that we're going to start paying more and more attention.
So sometime during my senior year of high school, I decided that I wanted to take a gap year. And I was toying with the ideas of either Russia or China or some other country, mostly because I wanted to learn a new language that was significantly different from Western European languages. The whole gap year was something that I stumbled into. It wasn't like I had this long time dream of going to China.
I'm from California, and a lot of my friends were from China or Taiwan or Hong Kong, and were first generation American, and some of them moved there when they were 5 or 6, and they all had interesting things to say about growing up in Asia, or how different the culture was, or what the cultural expectations on them were as Asian American. And I just became really curious about the culture and the language.
I was kind of surprised that a lot of my professors were women. So like 2 of my engineering professors were women actually, and only 1 was a man, so I thought that was kind of exciting. I could go and talk to them, and 1 was actually a pretty recent graduate herself, so she was pretty young and easy to talk to, and it was really nice like having that kind of role model, the same as I have here, of women engineers.
The gender roles, I think, are still more defined than here. What I saw was a lot of women that I met still had the focus of marriage and family life, but I did also meet a lot of people who were more career focused, and they were really starting to promote themselves in their society, so that was really cool too.
The woman is more maternal, so she's more of the homemaker, and she interacts with the kids more. She helps with the studying more, whereas the dad would sometimes be watching TV, or she would be preparing the food, and he would just be relaxing.
I'd actually expected women's roles to be more, not like oppressed, but I don't know, like women to be a little less powerful than they actually were. I mean, the big boss at my school when I was in Zhejiang was the chairwoman, and she was actually a really cool, kind of intimidating lady. And of course my boss and almost all of the upper level management when I was in Hong Kong were women.
All the women, I feel like, interacted with each other as though they already knew each other, like my tour guide and the doctors and like any other people that might be walking in. I felt like there was just this way that women interacted with each other that it seemed more like a community.
I did notice when my mother came to visit me at one point that she was getting there was a lot of passive-aggressive behavior towards her. I don't think it was necessarily intentional, but it was a lot of, she was getting insulted left and right. She would be passed over when they were like refilling drinks at the dinner table, and hers was empty, but hers wouldn't be refilled. All the men would have theirs refilled.
I went to China twice, and both times my host mom did work, which I wasn't necessarily expecting, I suppose. My first host mom was actually a police officer, which was pretty cool. And my second host mom was an accountant. And those are both, I suppose, I don't know if I'd say male-dominated jobs in the U.S., but not stereotypically female jobs. So I thought that was pretty, that was interesting that they weren't just stay-at-home moms. They did a lot of work with the kids and, had a huge amount of responsibility, but they still had their own jobs.
It was a lot more traditional to let the boys pay when you're going out, or to have your boyfriend carry your purse, or do those little things for you.
Let's see, I had an internship in Beijing, and even though the proportion of people working there were more men than women, I would say that women had as equally high positions, if not higher positions than men. So I didn't see it so much in the place that I interned, but I do know that there's kind of gender rules that are placed onto children, that men should do this type of work and women should do this type of work.
There's more of a sense of division between suitable for men, suitable for women, sort of courses of study and career tracks. I know my roommate while I was in China had planned to study traffic engineering, but since she was female, people said oh, that's not really for women, and so she's okay, and so she went into culinary science instead, which is cool, and she really liked it. But it wasn't what she'd planned to do, and she'd sort of gotten diverted based on her gender.
Because of the population skew, where there are more women now than males, I've learned that it's women can demand more in terms of finding a marriage partner, which I thought was really interesting.
I think that the male-female dynamic in China is coming to an interesting point, because China is growing and westernizing rapidly, but at the same time there's these strong, deep values that have, the traditional values really, that they're not going to go away so easily. So while you have the younger generations being much more westernized in their relations with the opposite sex, but on the other hand, you have businessmen who just have no idea about this stuff. And
I definitely did hear some complaints about having to deal with I guess businessmen.
My tour guide did say a few things to me that made me feel like possibly women in China are a little farther behind on the trajectory of feminism than people here, because she would say, but maybe just on a smaller scale, she would say things to me if we would get lost. She would say, "This is why you need a boyfriend, because women can't find their way anywhere." And I would be like, "What?"